What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Voice, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, very special guest, first-time guest, Mark Bell from Plague Doctor Press. We are here to talk about Strange Ranger, issues 1 and 2. So thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, James.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know we talked about it briefly before we got on, but I like to understand the methodology of why somebody got into the comic game. If you could, Mark, break it down for us.
Okay, so the very quick origin story is that I've been into comics for a long time. I bought comics off spinner racks and grocery stores and drugstores when I was a very small kid. I bought Crisis on Infinite Earth from a grocery store off a spinner rack, that sort of thing. I bought Teen Titans #1 off a spinner rack in a grocery store. And I got into comic book reading and collecting. I really liked the stories. A buddy of mine started working at a comic book shop in the mid 80s, and he just funneled all the good stuff to me. The Dark Knights, The Watchmen, the V for Vendetta, all of that good late 80s stuff, plus the Black and White Revolution books like TMNT and Crow and all those
Oh yeah.
stuff. So then, what happens? You finish school, you get a job, you settle down, you get kids, you have
Hmm.
all sorts of other things pulling on you. And we really, me and my friends wanted to make comics, but we really didn't know how. In the 80s, it was difficult to find out how comics were made. The How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way was out, but there was no magazines like Wizard or anything like that
Very true.
in that was available. So we were trying to figure out from the end product how you made this. And so we made a lot of bad comics because of that. But then I turned 50 and I was like, I want to make a comic. And what I did was I wrote a script and I found an artist. And when I was doing my research on Kickstarters,
Right.
because the number one thing I tell people who ask me about Kickstarter is do your research up front. I found an artist on one of those pages and I was like, her art is exactly the idea I have in my head. And
Mm.
this was for my first book called Spirit. And so, I kind of found out a few things about her, this young woman who was an artist. And I was like, okay, I got to be careful here. I'm a 50-year-old dude approaching a young woman who's an artist. And
Right,
I'm
right.
like, okay, I had my wife read the email. I had my kids read the email. And I sent it off to Melissa. And
Hmm.
about 20 minutes later, she came back and went, yeah, we'll do this. I was like, oh. So I did Spirit 1 and 2 with her. And now she is fantastic, easy to work with. She has a graphic novel from Dark Horse now. She's got a bunch of books coming out as well in the new year. So, like, she's just a shooting star. And so I did Spirit 1 and 2 with her. And then I was like, I need more books on my table. I want more books that are kid friendly and diversity friendly and LGBTQ friendly. And so I was like, okay, well, what other story could I do? And my wife was like, well, you made that video game, Strange Ranger. Why don't you take that game that you kind of made and make it into a comic? I was like, that's not a bad idea.
Mm.
And I wrote up the story and wrote up the script. And then I was looking for artists that fit. And I wanted an artist that fit with Melissa's stuff and that was unique. Like it's hard to say, but I wanted to have a table that looked unified at conventions, but wasn't the two books are not the same. They're definitely not the same, but they look good together. That's what I was going for.
Got
And I found this guy, Janssen Carbonell, out of the Dominican Republic, who just, oh my gosh, he's a rock star. He's so easy to work with, so fun to work with, and super creative, super collaborative. And we kickstarted Strange Ranger #1, funded that bad boy, and now we have successfully funded Strange Ranger #2. We just funded just before the podcast.
Absolutely. So congratulations on that.
So, so this story is there are going to be four issues in the first volume of Strange Ranger. The first issue really was Agatha, who is the Strange Ranger's first few days on the job
Right.
as a ranger of she's in charge of a whole park. Now this is an all ages story. It's there have been people who talked to me and said, well, there's no park that has one ranger in charge. I'm like, it's a kid's book with a weremoose. Okay.
Right, right,
Like,
right.
easy on the reality here.
Hmm.
But the story I wanted to tell with that book, Strange Ranger #1, was that it wasn't an easy job. It was Agatha's first job, and she
Hmm.
was really on her own. And she felt responsible, and a child goes missing. There's a lost child. This is a common occurrence at parks.
Hmm.
So it's a really well-known story. And then she runs into a whole sort of group of supernatural creatures who are also looking for this lost child, and how that story ends up unfolding
Hmm.
teaches her that she is not alone in looking after this park. There are many people, well, many creatures helping out with that, and that she is responsible, but she's not alone.
Right. And I noticed that basically through issue one, and thank you for the advanced copy, that she's more so fearful of like, or better yet, maybe a little bit more paranoid of being around the forest that very first time. And even into the introductions of some of the other characters, whether it's Gord or Esme and everything like that, she panics at first because maybe they look a little different, or maybe that they seem a little less than what she is, and
Yes.
she has to grow with them.
And then she, you're absolutely right, and that's purposeful.
Hmm.
And but by the end of the first issue, she has seen amazing, life-changing things. And yet the friendships that she's built with Gord and Esme is the most important thing to her.
Right. And it's funny, just not to dive off the subject. I've the three books that I've seen you do recently through Plague Doctor, whether it's been Zed, Spirit, and Strange Ranger, you often have these storylines of interesting dynamics between friendships.
It really is a lot to me. I think that there are too many, like when I started out Plague Doctor Press 6 years ago, I was reading through previews, and I was still seeing a lot of white dudes beating up other white dudes in their underwear. Now, I'm telling you, tomorrow I'm going down to get my Batman comics, my Daredevil comics. I
Right, right,
love
right.
my comics,
Yep.
right? I love that stuff. But I knew that that wasn't going to set me apart in the market. And I knew it wasn't the story inside me.
Right.
And so I wanted to create stories that were um, about young women specifically,
Okay.
that weren't necessarily centered around romance or relationships,
Okay.
that in that traditional sense of women's narratives. I wanted to tell different stories uh, with women that were not necessarily like that. And
Mhm.
Agatha is certainly like that. There's not even a mention of anything romantic
Yep.
in that story. And that, you know, being an being an adult, or even being in high school and finding friends, is hard.
Yeah.
So those stories should be celebrated. And so I really wanted to definitely pick out the that Spirit is about a group of friends who has a new person join that group of friends.
Hmm.
And that dynamic gets interesting. So,
Right. You come to realize, I guess, with her first couple days on the job, that she's of course young herself, and the teenagers that she basically has to take care over are driving her insane
well,
already.
that's a thing that everybody does, right? When
Yeah.
everybody gets that first job in high school or just after high school, your friends come over and they're acting like kids, and you're like,
Right.
stop doing that, man.
Yeah. They're like, I'm here on the job. Why am I wearing this hat? Because this is my job. This is my uniform. You know,
Yeah.
like certain things that they were basically asking her. But unassuming, even though the forest may not be what it seems, there might have been a little bit of fear going in. It's almost a little bit of enchantment when she meets Esme or meets Gord. The what we talked about before, that I guess that introductory paranoia all of a sudden settled in, and then she actually got to know these people to where
Well,
she.
what happens is she immediately realizes that Esme is hurt and
Mhm.
needs her help more than she needs to freak out.
Right.
So she uses her skills and knowledge to help Esme, and she still has a little bit of a freak out,
Right.
but that sort of knowledge, her knowledge and training come into effect
Hmm.
because it's more important that this person needs her and
Hmm.
needs her help than it is that they look different.
Right. And even so in that fact, she even comes to find out that inside of this forest, outside of the park that maybe she's working for, these people are having ceremonies, they're having like interesting social moments, and Esme is displaying her magic for everybody to see. So it's
Yep.
almost like I had no idea that this was even possible, yet did I know that it was real. And now I'm just going to sit here and take it in. And now I have a new dynamic friendship that I
I
didn't have before.
I love those stories of two versions of the same thing.
Hmm.
Like it's it, there is a park that she is now welcome in and interested in, as well as the regular park. And
Right.
the placing those two worlds together creates comedy and interest, and like especially those last couple of pages of Strange Ranger 1 where there's parallel constructions, right? Where there's a child returned and another child gets lost,
And the
and
child gets lost immediately. So
yeah.
which of course is kind of like the cliffhanger that is going to lead to issue two, which is now on Kickstarter.
Yes. And so Kickstarter 2, not only that, and you'll like this being a story person, I got to the end of Strange Ranger 2 and I was lettering it, and I just created a title box at the bottom and put in Night of the Troll Badgers. I had no idea what they were.
You didn't
I
know
had
how you were going to
no
get to
idea
it.
what was going to happen.
Okay.
Nothing. I knew what a night was, but that was about it.
Mm.
And so I like that kind of placing me in a, it makes me think about the story. It gives myself a hook. And now that we know what the troll badgers look like and what they act like, oh, it is crazy town in the park now.
Now the old gentleman that we saw in issue one that ends up
Yes.
taking that walk at the end of issue two, is he a troll badger himself, or is he something totally
No,
different?
but he's all involved with everything.
Ah, okay, got you. Because with the was it with the preview pages that you gave for issue two, it's funny because like you saw like all the troll badgers like basically staring down at something, and one of them was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, almost looked like Chip and Dale, one of the rescue rangers.
Yeah, that's all purposeful.
Okay, got you.
These guys are crazy. They're the way I described them to Janssen was chaos incarnate. They are um, badgers who are magical and crazy all at the same time. They're completely chaotic. They're not mean or hurtful,
Hmm.
but they're destructive. They're like gremlins,
Right,
but they're cute on top of it all.
right, right,
Uh,
right. It's like an Ewok.
Yes, they are destructive, chaotic Ewoks.
Got you. Got you. So, uh, I guess for the most part, now that Agatha has built these relationships out of issue one, in issue two, now with this, I guess, more variable of a problem with the troll badgers, she now has allies on her side who can help.
Yes, absolutely. And uses her allies to help with this situation. Because what happens, a little bit, to give you a little bit of the story in the beginning, Esme asks Agatha to go with her on a trip.
Hmm.
And she just thinks, oh, okay, well, it's an afternoon. I'll go with her. And then they come back and it's been 3 days, but they don't, time has passed differently where they are at.
Oh,
So Gord's been left alone at the park, and the troll badgers have taken over, and he is completely overwhelmed
and outnumbered.
and outnumbered. So
So,
leads to hijinks.
yeah, so I'm guessing that the forest is a little more than enchanted than I think. So Esme, of course, knows of the magic of the forest, but we didn't see that much of it in issue one. So
No,
I'm pretty sure now we're going to see like almost exactly how much power and magic is in this forest than what we
well,
expected to see.
she's going to go to the library of trees to get something to help with the troll badgers, and that's going to open up a whole kind of part of the forest that Agatha had no idea about also.
Mm. So by in issue two, does this mysterious old gentleman come back?
Oh yeah.
God.
Again, in almost kind of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer model, he's the big bad for the whole four books,
Okay.
and his influence grows and grows. In issue three, it'll grow immensely, and then there's the conflict and how it resolves in issue four.
Mm. So I asked this. Doing these two books, doing of course the ones you've done before, whether it's been Spirit or Zed, um, you could have went any route that you wanted to as far as comics are concerned. What made you want to get into, I guess, the genre of an all ages book?
Well, I wanted to do all ages books because A, I really had been enjoying reading a lot of all ages books,
Hmm.
and that there were all ages books that weren't necessarily children's books, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So things like Lumberjanes comes to mind immediately, right? So I wanted to do things like that. Also, there's a lot of like I'm not gonna say I don't like anybody's work that they do,
Right.
but there's a lot of certain types. Um there's a lot of superhero books.
There is.
There's a lot of NSF books, right?
Hmm.
FW books.
Yep.
All that's great. Go make your book. Whatever your story is, whatever your voice tells you, go make that.
Yep.
But then you have a dude like Caleb Palmquist, who I think you've had on the show,
I have.
who is like, this unicorn is a vampire hunter.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, that's fantastic.
I often joke with him, and I was like, I would really, really like to see your whiteboard. You probably have a bunch of animals on one side, and then you have another set of animals on another side, and you just literally draw a line from one end to the other end, and you be like, I'm going to make a story about this. You know,
So
I'm
I wanted to tell a different story like that. On top of it, I wanted to create comic books that made people want to make comic books,
hmm.
especially young women, people of color, LGBTQ kids, right?
Right.
That was my I don't want to say target market because I think anybody can enjoy these books, but I wanted those people to pick up my book and think about making books because I always try to put people of color on the cover. I always try to put LGBTQ storylines and information in the books. I always try to present, comics, there are still not enough women-led comics.
This is
Even
true.
though there are more than ever,
Yeah,
there's
there's a
still
lot more
not
authors
enough.
nowadays, but not enough.
So I wanted to do all those things. And that led to Spirit, which was kind of the cool girls I wish I knew in high school, kind of, that have their own YouTube channel that prove that ghosts don't exist, and then ghosts show up in that comic, and you're like,
Hmm.
I guess we got to deal with this now. So
This is true. Now, with the I guess the geography of Strange Rangers 1 and 2, I'm going to guess that you've been camping before.
I was a Boy Scout,
Okay.
and
See?
I went to a World Scouting Jamboree, and I've done quite a bit of research into Park Rangers. So
Okay.
yes.
Got you. Got you. So, and I see for the most part you're from Indiana, but are you by way of Canada?
Yes, so I grew up in Canada, and then when I was 29, I moved to the US.
Okay. Got you. That now, uh, difference, of course, geographically, Canada and Bloomington, Indiana, is it pretty much the same?
Um, to my family, I live in the South. They 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 majorly say it never gets cold and never snows here, which I kind of agree
You kind
with.
of agree now.
It just doesn't get cold here the way it does at home. And so this Strange Ranger kind of takes place in a place that has all four seasons. Because if you notice, the first book is spring, the second book is summer, the third book will be fall, and then the last book will be winter.
Oh, okay, got you, got you. So she's a year-round park ranger. Got it.
Yep.
Now, also, something that I always ask any of my guests, in the creation of these two books, obviously, when you finish them, you want to get them out to the public as you can, whether it's through Comic Cons, whether it's online, social media, or anything like that. What has the reception been like?
Well, I am absolutely stunned. If you would have talked to me 6 years ago at this time, I was just starting out and just thinking about doing a comic book company.
Mm,
Spirit 1 is in its third printing
yep.
now. Spirit 2 is in its second printing now. Zed will do another printing of the omnibus. Strange Ranger, I'm about to order its second printing for number one, and I'm gonna order number two. Like I am overwhelmed that I have sold thousands of comics to people and that they are reading my books. And my local shop has my books in the store in the front window and all sorts of super positive things. So I am completely overwhelmed. First of all, I'm overwhelmed that I have a comic book that's 32 pages in color. Now, the fact that I have four of them now and
Yeah.
soon to be five of them is absolutely amazing to me. And, you know, the joke is what would your teenage self think of you now? Well, if I went back and told my high school self that I had five color comic books that I had made and published and produced and they'd sold multiple printings, and I did a really cool podcast with my wife that has over a 500,000 downloads, I think my high school version of myself would be like, okay, you're okay, old man.
Yeah. That was, yeah, that's excellent. Now, and in even so, I mean, I think you talked about it a little bit earlier about the artist that you have for Strange Ranger, because the artwork in here is top notch. I believe
Jan
the gentleman, Janssen Carbonell.
Yeah, Janssen Carbonell, he's from the Dominican Republic. So I only hire diverse or marginalized individuals, right? So
Hmm.
people of color, women, LGBTQ, not because those people are better, but they don't get the chances
Get the
that white
opportunities.
dudes get. And
Yep.
I've had to say to some white dudes who bring their stuff to my table, I'm like, Your artwork is fantastic. It's beautiful. This right here, this is fantastic. I
Yep.
don't hire white guys. I'm sorry. You're
Hmm.
going to get hired by somebody else. Your work is fantastic, but I'm not going to hire you. So to find Janssen Carbonell, young man in the Dominican Republic, bilingual, right?
Hmm.
So first of all, Spanish, English speaker, communicates fantastically with me, collaborates fantastic with me. He's fast and he's just amazing. He sends me pages and I'm like, dude, there's no notes to this page.
Hmm. Is he doing the lines, the inks and the colors?
He does the pencils, the inks, and the colors.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think like Melissa, his he really shines in his rendering. Like his flats are great and all
Right.
that, but when he renders those like that those pages of the ceremony that happened in issue number 1 are
Yeah.
just they're magical.
Hmm.
That stuff, and when that's printed on such good printing job from I use Comics Wellspring to do my printing. When those books are on my table, they sell themselves. People are like,
Yeah.
wow, look at that artwork, look at the color, look at all that.
And the funny thing is, like, they'll look at artwork like that, and they have no idea what the story is, and they'll just be like, "Wow, this like stands out to me."
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, I love the guy. I hope to get 4 issues out of him before he's a rock star.
Yeah, because I'm about to say he's already a Ringo nominated artist.
Yeah.
It didn't take long.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. You tell me 6 years ago I'm working with one Dark Horse uh artist and another Ringo nominated artist, I'd be like, I can't afford those people.
But look, some of these people need, well, of course, indie comics to
Yeah.
build that resume. They need the what is it, the 100 hours of preparation, 1,000 hours of preparation, just the continuance of doing comics over and over and over again in order for them to be experts at their craft. And then
Well, I
somebody sees your work
yeah.
and is like, "Who drew this?" Oh, I would like to reach out to him.
Yep. Well, I don't know about you, but to me there's two things happening in comics.
Hmm.
The big two comics, DC and Marvel, are trying to figure things out and I don't think they're getting it. They're still trying things.
Hmm.
So I buy fewer Marvel and DC books now
Right.
than I buy of indie comics that are flourishing. There are always new books in the
There's always new
comic book
books.
shop
Hmm.
that would never have been available 10 years ago
Hmm.
because printing would have been way too expensive and are telling stories that are just amazing. Like just for example, like this book here, the Hobtown Mysteries.
Hmm.
These books are fantastic. And I don't think I see that 10 years ago. Certainly not 20 years ago
No.
with the Image Comics and the whole glut of McFarlane stuff and things like
Yeah.
that. Which, again, if that's your jam, and I know that's a lot of people's jams, that's
Hmm.
fantastic. But I want to get something that is drawn by a human being, that is fantastic to read, that has a story that compels me.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, I always have to tell people how big the indie market is. And it's like, well, for one, crowdfunding, of course, played a huge part in that. And
Yes, absolutely.
and of course, Kickstarter being one of the big proponents of that, almost just in comics will almost beat their profits annually every single year. Just in indie comics alone. I think they did like $30 million in indie comics alone last year. So God knows what they're going to do this year. But
Well, I know that my accountant was like, "You're like selling comic books, and like you're selling comic books at $10 a pop now." I'm like, "Yeah,"
yeah, that's how much
and
these cost.
$10 for 32 color pages is I am not in this money to make money. This is a hobby that funds itself.
Yeah.
I take all the money, I put it back into things.
It's a
If
pay
I
it
have
forward
extra
business.
money, it's going to go to printing or for me to pay an artist to do a poster or something like that. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in making a whole bunch of money. I want people to read my books. And
Yeah.
now I have thousands of people reading my books.
Yeah. Indie comics is a pay it forward business. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
like as soon as the funds come in, guess what? It's going right to issue two.
Yep.
And then it keeps on circulating back and forth, back and forth. So, of course, me and you, we got the chance to initially talk on Blue Sky. And this has
Yes.
now been like a sort of renaissance again because it's a whole new social media app and a lot of indie comic creators, of course, have jumped into this app and
Yes.
they got a chance to talk to each other again.
I got to tell you, I was worried. I was worried about X and its situation, and
Yeah.
X was a huge part of my social media plan, and I was worried about it. It's an unstable platform,
Hmm.
and it's a platform that I have a number of problems with, especially in putting images of art that my artist did or art I paid for that is now not able to be opted out of their AI generation stuff,
Right, right.
right? So now I only ever post links on X, right? So go here and see this art and things like that so that they can't use art that I've paid for or that my artists have created. Then, so I was worried about that. And then, like a week before I launched in
Hmm.
mid November, it just erupted on Blue Sky. Now I had a Blue Sky account already and had already done some Blue Sky stuff, but it just erupted. And then these things called starter packs came out, which
Which helped a
allows
lot of
you,
us
yeah, these starter packs allow you to collect a bunch of people and share it with people. And the best part of the starter pack is
follow
there's
all.
two things. Follow all at the top. You just hit one button, follows everybody.
Yep.
And then, second of all, some smarty guy made an API call that allows you to search for all the starter packs. So
Yeah.
you just put in comics, indie, and what do you know? There's 20 starter packs right there.
You can follow
Then,
everybody.
then you have a bunch of people already followed, and you're seeing interesting content right away.
That look, I think for the most part it's been a game changer, especially in the comic genre, especially like just in the business of it. You know, it's allowing a lot of companies to start networking again on a good level.
I think so. I think so. And sharing like there was a guy who showed me a thing the other day called feeds where he has a feed that you can add to your feeds like across the top,
Yes.
but it shows you every comic Kickstarter
Yep.
that gets posted. And I'm like, well, I spend way too much money on
Yeah.
comic Kickstarter already.
Same.
But like I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna spend a lot of money here.
Yeah.
But I could go through that every day and be like, oh, that's a cool idea. And that's, see what other people are doing
Yeah.
too. Because
It's something.
it can be isolating doing this,
Yeah.
right? So
Sometimes the technology helps.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
definitely agree with that.
For sure, for sure. Because we've seen the other side.
You know, I I I try to remain positive and keep building on positive things,
Hmm.
but it has been an interesting fall to say the least.
I gotta say it. Yes, absolutely. Well, Mark, I appreciate you doing this with me. Once again, congratulations on funding Strange Ranger
Thank you
2
so much,
just
James.
before the pod.
It's been a blast to talk to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So from all of us here at the Facts Project, of course, you have I think what how many more days? 8 days left? Almost like a full week.
15 more
Oh,
days.
well, you got 2 weeks.
I know.
Lord knows where this is gonna go. You got stretch goals
I know.
galore now. All right. So, hey, look, sky's the limit.
Well, I got to tell you, I can announce this first on your show
Okay.
that I'm always a big proponent that you get your first uh, stretch goal when we hit funding,
Okay.
right? That should be celebrated.
Hmm.
Everybody is getting uh, a Plague Doctor Press coloring book. The people who back physically will get a physical coloring book, and the people who back uh, digitally will get the digital coloring book.
Nice, man. See, sometimes it's worthwhile.
Yep.
For sure. All right. Well, Mark, I appreciate you doing this with me once again. Once again, Strange Ranger 2, it has 2 more weeks in this campaign. So
Yep.
obviously these stretch goals are going to be unlimited. So from myself, James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Mark Bell with Plague Doctor Press, Strange Ranger 2, of course, live on Kickstarter right now. Here at the Facts Project, we are out.